we have this panel discussion on wind energy enabling PtX.
Hello, everyone. The objective of our panel discussion today is to give a perspective on green hydrogen and power to X to see how wind can be created and sort of developed in India to play a major role and what is required around that. So I have with me in my panel some very experienced people working in this sector for a number of years now. So we have Aravind, who is working in IIT Madras. He has been heading the Hyundai Hydrogen Hub lab in IIT Madras and is looking into various innovation technologies. We have Nishaanth, who has been very actively networking with all the developers, all the supply chain players, financiers, has a very good overview around, what is the pulse of the market. So that will give us what is the demand. We have Sudhir, who has been looking into the supply side and understanding how to sort of get wind going. And we have Mr. Bharat Saxena from Jindal, who are adopting green hydrogen and to give a perspective on how they look at it from the consumer side, this whole energy transition. So it's a pretty good panel and I'm looking forward to the discussion today. So I'll probably start with Aravind first. Being in the academia and, can you explain to everyone what is PtX all about? What are the ways in which, this technology is required in the market and innovations around it?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, sir. And thanks so much, Windergy, for this opportunity. So the fuel is always an important part of our lives. And of course, the hydrogen word, it's the way it's kind of projected in the country and elsewhere in the world, as if it's a new fuel that just came across. But however, hydrogen has been used for decades and decades, and specifically in the refining segment. That's one of the key places where we use hydrogen. Next is fertilizer. Of course, it has become a part of our life. Whenever we want to create ammonia and then eventually urea, we need hydrogen as a first feedstock eventually to start off everything. Then I think moving into the metal segment, steel is one of the bigger players, where we use hydrogen. However, we also talk about the new segments as we go along. The mobility segment. Mobility segment is a new segment as of that the hydrogen is going to be implemented heavily. If at all we do that, there is a technology risk associated. So, looking at the hydrogen and then eventually the downstream side after hydrogen, either it's ammonia or methanol, whatever it is, it's there for long. And it's not something that we have to adapt. It's already being adapted. Now, it's a mandate that we have to really make it green. Today, hydrogen, 1 kg of hydrogen to produce from SMR process, steam methane reform process, we generate somewhere between 10 and 27 kg of carbon dioxide. And now we have to reduce it when we go to the renewables. We have to really get it down to less than 2 kg. That's India's standard on the operational side. And that's where I think all of us are talking about. And how to get that 10 or to 27 to less than 2. Solar and wind are going to play a huge role. The cost of renewables is going to be the operational cost is just 2 things. If it is electrolysis process, water and electricity. Of course, water purification do require some sort of energy. And then next is the power production. Of course, that requires some amount of energy.
But Aravind, can you give a bit of more definition of what is power to X? Because I don't think a lot of people understand, power to X. Yeah. What is the X in power to X?
Yeah, I think X, of course, can be filled with anything, honestly, today. So the bigger X is hydrogen to start off with. And let me not go into the ammonia. Ammonia is also considered as X, but then first hydrogen, then goes ammonia, then methanol. Like there's a first stop is hydrogen, always. Somewhere we can convert directly, let's say, carbon dioxide. If we want to convert to carbon dioxide to some value-added fuels, for example, that can be the X straight away can go to formic acid, methane, methanol, like ethane, ethanol, something of that sort, when we convert carbon dioxide to fuels. So how to convert carbon dioxide to fuels or water to hydrogen or biomass or waste to any of the fuels through electricity. And that's where I think the term power has come in, obviously. Yeah. However, hydrogen has taken the front line. Everything else is also important, but hydrogen is still the most important thing today. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And now I ask Bharat, Bharat, from the demand side, when you look at, the use applications, as Aravind was mentioning, power to X seems to be a very broad market with a lot of applications where you are converting electrons to molecules, and those molecules are this. So it feels like that, it's a man-made creation of molecules that is happening. And once you produce molecules from that, you can actually create a lot of things. So it has a lot of potential. But being in the industry, where do you see the first few applications coming in?
Yeah. Very nice, Sidharth. Thanks for the question. Good morning, everybody. Basically, first of all, let me just introduce you myself. I am from a Jindal group. Jindal group is into a steel, into a cement. They are the sectors which are really hard to abate sectors. They do not get any incentives, but still a lot of decisions we have taken.
Can you tell what is hard to abate, just for people to understand what is hard to abate?
Hard to abate sector means the sectors which are creating a lot of emissions. They produce a lot of greenhouse emissions gases. And if you say the steel, per ton of whatever the steel we produces, 2.5 tons of CO2 we emit for each tons of crude steel, whatever we are producing. Same thing happens for cement and other things. And they all have their own captive plants, which is they are getting power at very cheap rate. At the same time, when you are trying to convert them into RE, plus green hydrogen, plus a lot of other initiatives, carbon capture, so many things we all want to do, because at the end, India has to achieve net zero, and we also want to achieve net zero. So, and these sectors, this all becomes sometime a burden to a company, because this all becomes a quite big size operation cost. So we'll have to work in such a way, we have to work in a very, very efficient way. So what we started doing is, we started a company called Jindal Renewable, which I belongs to Jindal Renewable. And we have worked out how we do this entire decarbonization process. The decarbonization process starts, first of all, converting from fossil fuel to green energy. The fossil fuel is the captive thermal plants, which gradually will be converted. Second thing what we started is, we already have a coal gasification, which nobody else in the country has, which already produces around 54% of the hydrogen. But that is a grey hydrogen from the syngas. So syngas we are injecting into DRI. So how we convert, we are trying to convert this syngas also into green hydrogen. So we have started the first project in India, 5% injection, conversion of this syngas by means of a green hydrogen. For that we are putting up the 30 megawatt electrolyzer, which is a 30 megawatt RE-RTC power. That is, I think, one of the largest projects which is happening in India. Mm-hmm. And for that, what we are trying to see is, the RE power is a major cost for all these things. So
we'll come to economics in some time. Yeah. But from a practical application point of view, across your steel and cement sector, you are able to see that, okay, if you convert power to molecules, there is a lot of value.
A lot of value we have. Mm-hmm. Because entire steel sector, we have a lot of values where we can use the green hydrogen. Presently, what you are using is a grey hydrogen. Converting that into a green hydrogen itself is a big task. We'll have to produce approximately around 90,000 tons of green hydrogen. So we started first 4,500 tons as a pilot project.
So as Aravind was saying, that Power-to-X is a very broad field, that you have so many applications coming in. And the first and foremost, of course, people think about is wherever hydrogen is being used, we convert it into green hydrogen. And as Bharat is also mentioning that they are using a lot of grey hydrogen, and they've already started to think about how to convert it into green hydrogen into the applications that are coming in. So now the X comes from the steel, the cement, or directly the ammonia that is being used or in the refinery. Sudhir, I come to you now. Again, the question is on the demand side, and when you look at it from your interactions in the industry and how you're looking at it, where do you see the demand coming in India in the next 3 to 5 years practically, and how much, in what fields?
Thanks for this invite here. So I'm Sudhir Pathak from Hero Future Energies. I am the CTO of the company. And a very, very apt question. So almost for past 2.5 years, we are working in that space of how we can move from just being an RE supplier to be a net zero partner for the people like you. So there are mixed reactions. So fundamentally, technically, demand is humongous. Domestically, whenever you go and talk to any C&I off-taker, steel fellow like here, or you can talk to cement people. I think you were talking about cement hard to abate. So the initial traction is humongous, but they are really, really hard to abate. In the sense, they are attracted to understand what you do, how you can do it, but ultimately they zero down, can you match the conversional price with this? So that is a fundamental issue which is there. But like
But demand first, where do you see the demand in terms of the application areas? How much do you see?
Yeah, so demand perspective, the lowest hanging fruit is refinery, where
Refinery.
you have to use hydrogen, simply replace one-to-one. So just giving an example, just 2 days back, we have commissioned our first pilot plant on hydrogen, which was directly injecting hydrogen into the LPG
Okay.
for the furnace application.
How
So
big is that?
it's pilot, so it's a 300 kilowatt. So it is yet to be declared as commissioned, but yeah, we have test commissioned it. So we have touched what is happening. So let me give, regarding your question about the demand, I think demand is infinite, right? So, but that is a technical demand. But commercially, when it will really come on the ground, time will tell. So if I take 1, 2, 3, 4, number 1 is your refineries. I do not think fertilizer is the demand sector because it's hugely subsidized. Each and every paper moves with the government subsidy, so they have a lot of backlash. Second thing I believe is definitely steel because of the European CBAM issues. So they are forced to go in that direction to be competitive in this world. Number 3 is, I believe, to an extent, the transport sector. Because a lot of things are going on, not 100% HICE engine, maybe fuel cell based, or maybe partial, you can say, injection, dual fuel based. That is one thing which is coming up. So on all those, and fourth is, apart from steel, I will say to an extent cement. But the bad part of cement in India is most of the cement industries are working on pulverized coal-based heating, which is a solid fuel, right? So, and they have, you can say, horizontal kilns or precalciners, injecting the lightest molecule in the world, hydrogen, into it. It has a different way. My fellow can very well explain that. It likes to go up rather than horizontal. So, plus moisture is the second part. So there are many things. But I believe that's why the government of India is also aligned to believe in exports, because European Union has created a kind of incentives, penalties, ETS, and all those things, wherein you can definitely think about scaling up your Indian infra suitable for exports and replicate that scalability for Indian and bring the price down. Many technology are challenges. As we move ahead, I'll explain about that.
Great. So refinery, steel, and mobility. So the first two sectors are where you are already using hydrogen, you're replacing it from gray to green. And the third one is where you have diesel and gas. Maybe it's not that much in India, but there's a lot of plan to bring that in, but it's shifting directly from diesel to hydrogen. So it's a substitution side of the market. Anything about the derivatives like methanol, the X part, the derivatives,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that will be the first one.
Okay.
I believe hydrogen as hydrogen molecule, in my opinion, it is still far-fetched. In my opinion, maybe for annealing process in the steel industry, not for DRI, because in India even DRI is again through coal pulverized and all those stuff. I believe annealing process is the simplest one, where you can simply put an electrolyzer and move it across. But as far as export is concerned, ammonia and methanol, the other ones, either directly as a fuel or as carrier of hydrogen. So where you can crack ammonia back to hydrogen and burn it somewhere. So I think that is going to take the front seat first, and then gradually that will scale up your domestic industry for production of hydrogen. Your electrolyzers are the biggest bottleneck. Their efficiency is just 60%.
Yes.
And that means what 40% of your RE power is getting lost. That means you need highly efficient electrolyzers to make it 95%, which is coming forth.
We'll come to
next
that.
3 years.
We'll come to that.
Sure.
But again, just to sort of recap what we have discussed is that hydrogen is a molecule which is quite flexible, can be used in many applications. There are multiple applications, out of which, as we see that, the first 3 applications are refinery, steel, and mobility, and export market, which is driven by conversion into derivatives. So there is not only an export in domestic market, but also an export market, which brings me to Nishaanth on this segment. So Nishaanth, you interact with so many people all over the world. You understand how India is positioned in the export market. You understand the policies in India, how investors are looking at it. So can you give me your sense of the demand and how you see the demand shaping up in India, both in export and domestic market?
Sir, thanks very much. When you heard all these gentlemen speak about where the demand is, you see, India today, our demand for hydrogen and hydrogen derivatives are around 7 million tons between mostly refineries and ammonia. And this is slated to go up to 12 million tons by 2030, or 11 points. You know the numbers better than I do, but it's 11 point something, right? Now, there are all of these other sectors that are going to come in, and everybody's talking about it, right? There's steel and cement, there's glass making, there's pharmaceuticals, specialty chemicals that all use hydrogen derivatives. They're all small pockets of demand, but they can absorb the cost, right? Now, when it comes to some of these other sectors, let's talk about them. Refineries, sure, that should be the biggest. They can do it at this price point. The price can be absorbed, so we should focus on refineries. Ammonia, yes, because these subsidies that the government is giving, there's so many ways the government can take advantage of green ammonia because it's not fluctuating with natural gas prices. Over a 10-year, 20-year time frame, you can have better fiscal policies and regimes, to address this issue. The cost does not need to be passed on to the farmer, right? It can be absorbed by different government entities. And earlier this week on Monday, we had a CEO roundtable. Sidharth was also there with several 20, 15 other companies from India. And this is something we want to take to the ministry and bring the Ministry of Fertilizers and the Ministry of Finance and explore this. Because if another Russia-Ukraine happens, you'll have to start signing off another few lakh crores of subsidies.
But when you talk to everyone, what is the sense of the number that you are getting we will hit in terms of?
I'll give you the numbers here. So India, today there's 3,000 kilotons, 3,000 kgs of green hydrogen being produced in India. Right? This is 3,000 kgs. The government target by 2030 is 5 million. The announced projects in terms of capacities is 7.7 million.
And how much is practically, do you think, when you talk to interactions, people that this can be really the...
See, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, right? It's quite dark where we are sitting, and because it's challenging. It's not about putting a wind and solar plant, right? It's several sectors into one. You see in India, the earliest projects are coming from renewable energy developers, and it's export-oriented ammonia projects. Almost 96% of all projects announced in India are for export markets and will be most likely ammonia. In Europe, the FIDs that happened this year are mostly for consumption in refineries. That is a direct effect of government policies taking place. Now, when it comes to the mood and sentiments here in India, there's been a lot of shakeups because you come from the power sector, yes, 70% of the cost is coming from renewables and power, but then you're handling chemicals, right? See, the oil and refineries, they've been doing it, but they've been doing it in close quarters, captive projects. But now we're talking about transporting it, exporting it. Then when you come to making it, fine, there's the engineering, there's electrolyzer. But then the most important thing is when you go to applications, it's so versatile, right? So you can't build an expertise like this for steel itself. They do so much. But now as a hydrogen producer, you can't build that expertise for steel. As cement, again, it's early stages of R&D and then transporting the ammonia, etc., specialty chemicals.
So although it's very promising and there are a lot of interest, but it's going to be there in the future, but the short term might be a little bit rocky. That's what I understand.
Without a doubt, it will exist, and I think this is the greatest opportunity for India. Even 5 years ago, we would have never imagined India will be an exporter of energy. We are here. We are going to be exporting energy, and more than that, we are going to support this ecosystem with manufacturing.
One of the roundtables that we were there, I was talking to someone who is very senior in the industry and into renewable energy industry. He said to me that, look, if you look at the global map and you point out all the countries who are energy majors, and they are all having their legs in the oil and gas sector. So for them to transition to green, it is a very hard decision because they think whether they should save their oil and gas business, whether they should invest in green. But India is starting from a clean slate. So if we do not do it, it's a missed opportunity on us. And that's where I think some sort of points need to happen. Which brings me to the next segment on the economics of green hydrogen. So what Aravind, I would again come to you. What needs to happen economically, to bring the economics? What should be the target? I will ask each of the panelists the same question. What should be the target and what should happen for the numbers to come down economically to make hydrogen take off in the country?
Great. I'll approach this question from the technology perspective, actually. Of course, whenever we talk about green hydrogen, there are only two major costs coming in. The price of renewable electricity. Second is the capex cost that we put in for electrolyzers or like biomass to hydrogen plant, whatever it is, typically electrolyzers. So if you look at the hub that I'm leading at IIT Madras, we are looking into making everything local, which automobile industries have already adopted. Like our MSMEs are very good at making all those components local at 1/10 of the price when we have to import the same thing. Our MSMEs are very good at making those components, let's say electrolyzers, which generates hydrogen today. Can we leverage the expertise of the MSMEs? And there are some gaps available today, which needs to be innovated at academic labs, R&D labs, national labs, whatever it is. If you can combine all these things together, the silo working principle in India that we have been doing in academia so far, I think has to be erased out completely. Work not just with other academic institutes, but also with MSMEs and large industries, and try to bring the entire ecosystem together.
So there's a lot of localization opportunity which you
localization is what we need to do. Absolutely. It's not the technology risk. It's about the localization risk. Exactly. That's going to bring the capex cost down significantly is what we believe. And when you scale up, I just end with this point. India has never been an early adopter of technologies, like whatever it is. Typically, it goes mature elsewhere, and then we start adapting it once we have a confidence in it. With the electric vehicles, of course, we have been a bit slow, but whereas with hydrogen, we start going along with the rest of the world. Meaning we have to adapt to the lot of failures, which is going to happen eventually. A lot of failures. And the industrial R&D segment has to be done to avoid the failures of our products which are going to be installed in the market, which eventually going to increase the life of the electrolyzer, for example, and my returns are going to be better, right? So I use simple word, performance, health and safety. These three parameters at the large scale level is going to be hampered in India because we are early adapters now for the hydrogen segment. Performance, use the local thing
and
scale. Health, work on studying the industrial R&D, how they fail. I think that we have been really bad at. Hopefully we will do that with the hydrogen space. Yeah.
Great. Sudhir, what is the economics of green hydrogen, where it needs to be for the demand to take off?
Yeah, I think in order to sell anything, you have to be at the lowest price. So at various forums, I keep on stating that typically the myth is that, okay, in future my RE price will come down. So it will not come down. Let me share that because you have to be more going into round the clock. You have to add storage into it. And so definitely your RE power will, if not below, it will remain same or slightly go up. So the fundamental bottleneck in the green hydrogen value chain is the electrolyzer efficiency, which I keep on stating in all the forums. So today, if you see the commercial ones, alkaline or PEM, they have an efficiency of 60 to 65%. That means you are losing 40% of your precious energy. RE energy, which is very, very costly, 70% component RE is the capex is RE. So giving a small example, if $4 per kg of hydrogen, right? And suppose 70% is RE, okay? So 70% if you say, so 3.2 or 2.8, whatever you name, 70, 75%, whatever. So $2.8 is a contribution of that. Now, if the efficiency is 60%, that means 30% or 40% you are losing. Okay, so almost 1.2 to 1.5 you are losing. So that means India being full of scientific people, the fellow colleague here, and IIC Bangalore, lot many institutes, and startup culture is fundamentally into software. So the government support, if it is given for long gestation, such electrolyzer innovations, a lot of science graduates who aspire to be to do something. So putting a fact, there are two technologies around the world who have claimed at TRL level 2 or 3, their efficiency is 95%. Okay, how? Because they have devised a membrane-less technology. Because membrane creates higher electron volts to pump your ions across the membrane. So that means it is doable. If it's being done by Israel or Australia, why not India, right? So that is one thing and foremost thing. Second thing to drive down the economics down is like now the newest technology for RE is coming out to be, if I say solar, first of all, it's called tandem. I will not name HJT. HJT is still have limitations. Tandem solar cells which are with perovskites. Okay, so they can breach the barrier of technical limit of you can say 32% of the maximum theoretical efficiency. They go up to 45%, right? So I believe that technological investment if happens in India as well, because it is not it's a synthetic material. It is halide. You're not have to go and mine silicates for that, right? So that if it happens, it can come at a dirt cheap rate in future. That may bring your RE down, right? Third thing is definitely wind. I always, although it's a Windergy forum, I always say that wind is now a necessary evil because now we can't live without it for making your LCOE or you can say RTC kind of scenario. So from that perspective, I believe still there are a lot of hurdles wherein you need better specific power. If I say better is not higher, you need poor specific power because now either our good land area is held up because of airstrips or there is no connectivity there.
We'll come to that.
Okay, so I can speak for an hour, so you can go on.
But
Okay.
Bharat, the point, can you first of all elaborate why Sudhir was mentioning RE-RTC power is required and what is the role that you think is of wind to bring down the cost?
Yeah, it's very important when we want to produce the green hydrogen. We'll have to have a quality RE-RTC power available.
What is RE-RTC? Can you explain what-
RE-RTC is by 24/7, we should be able to get RE power.
So
That is only possible when you have a very good mix of solar plus wind and a small part of a storage also. Because the equation economics only is workable when this overall cost you bring down. As Mr. Sudhir has mentioned, the technology in solar is really improving, the efficiencies are improving. So solar cost one side we are able to bring down. But to get a RE-RTC, wind is the most important factor. Even it should not be 50-50, it should be around 70-30. 70 should be wind and 30 should be
Wow.
solar. Then only you can get a high quality of RE-RTC power. But because the capital cost of wind is little higher at this point of time, very important to have some innovative process where we can bring it down, and very important to have a complementary profile. The kind of load profile what we have to have is optimize the uses of solar, optimize the uses of wind, like you have something in Tamil Nadu, same time have something in MP or Gujarat, so they complement each other, or complement Tamil Nadu, Karnataka or MP, so that you get a very high quality power. This will really help us to bring down our LCOE, because entire equation of economics works out to be 70% of the cost is RE. How much you bring it down, it is workable. Second thing is
What
very
is-
important is
what is the target?
application you are going to use it.
But what is the target price for RE?
Target price has to be less than 3.5 rupees.
3.5 rupees.
Then only it is workable. Then only you can think of getting $2 per kg of hydrogen, which we are trying to see that we make it possible.
And what
in
is the
our-
current price? What is the current price? 5 rupees, 4.5?
Current prices are approximately around 4.5 to 5 rupees, which
Okay.
is really on the very high side. But we have done for our 30 megawatt RE-RTC power, we are trying to see that how can we bring it less than 4 rupees. And I think we have got good success also. We are adding up 90% of the 90 megawatt of wind plus 30 megawatt of solar only.
Wow.
With that, we are really going to have a very good mix of solar plus wind for our entire 30 megawatt electrolyzer what we are going to put up in, what we have started execution in at our Angul plant actually. So this is the way it is workable. Second thing is how better machines you use, because India is going through a class 3 zone speeds. The wind speeds are not very high.
We'll take it in the next. So Nishaanth, what is the number in terms of the target reduction in the price of RE? How the economics will work for hydrogen?
All these gentlemen touched on several areas, and I think Professor Aravind set the tone for the rest of this conversation. But let's switch back and see what prices make economic sense. It's somewhere below $4 now with some of the biggest projects in India. And in fact, it'll be announced very soon. I think India will have one of the first gigawatt size ammonia projects coming online in the world very soon, right? And this project has reached FID. Most of you all will be aware it's in Kakinada. Now, at $3 per kg, there is a lot of use cases for green hydrogen and derivatives. At 2, again, it expands, right? And then once you hit the $2 mark, there's no stopping. And today, there are so many levers you can use to make it viable for industries. Now, H2 green steel, the hydrogen cost is 4 times higher, and the steel component in a luxury car is about 14%. That 14% of the cost is 2.53 times higher. Ultimately, for the consumer, it's a 6%, 7% increase in the cost of the car. And if you say this is made of green steel, Europeans at least don't mind paying that 6% more, right? So this is how it's working now with one of the largest, green steel projects in the world. Now, you heard about reduction in renewable energy power, and it's debatable. Will it really go down like it has been? Then you're looking at free renewable energy almost. So let's assume that it doesn't. Let's look at other ways of reducing cost. A professor touched on improving efficiencies in your electrolyzers, reducing your capex there, localizing parts and all of that. They all contribute 6% here, 12% in some cases, 14% somewhere else. But what would be the biggest lever is the cost of financing, right? The cost of financing, if it can come down from this 12, 14%, and once it hits the 7%, 6.5% mark, green hydrogen is viable today, right? So that is also a big lever. And you were part of one of those workshops in those series that we did, where we discovered this, and even it was further affirmated by another international organization as well. Now, how do we get here, and why do we have to treat this as an emergency? Is because we are all talking about green hydrogen here today only because climate is an emergency, right? We've all promised to reduce emissions and fight global warming. So this has to be treated as a priority sector. Governments, different agencies have to take efforts to help enable this, and not industries leading in India, but I think there's so many more stakeholders that need to contribute.
So just to recap, what I understand is that the price needs to be around 3 to 3.5 rupees per kilowatt hour for 24/7 renewable power to take it to $2 to $3 per kg, which is an acceptable price for takeoff. Now, to do that, we have to reduce the price by 30 to 40%. As Sudhir is mentioning that is not possible, that the price will not go down. But I would still want to understand from all of you what technologies in the wind sector you see are required to be able to bring down the cost. Are those machines available? Let's say the best that can be done to be able to take advantage of India. So here maybe you can start. Are those machines available in India? Are those technologies available in India? Is there any innovation that is required around that?
So first let me clear the myth of like people typically take as a misnomer that round the clock 24/7 means like a thermal, right? So I am from a thermal background. So thermal, that it's a complete closed loop control where you have, how much coal you have to input, how much steam will be generated, superheated, and it can run. So you can even control milliwatts.
Minute by minute.
Yeah. So definitely whenever we say RTC around the clock, it's like a kind of quasi load following, wherein you can control to an extent within tolerance band. In case you go for 100%, even 3.5, it is 8 rupees or even 10 or 20 rupees, right? So the thing I want to put in that definitely you can go to the round the clock with some tolerance band, looking into the sensitivity of the chemical industry, because chemical industry are conventionally meant for continuous inputs, right? So now the people like us, now we are trying to play with that, making it as a toy. So, but we have to be very sensitive on that. Taking that as a benchmark, definitely, yesterday I was talking to one of my colleagues about offshore. So one beauty of offshore, although there are a lot of negatives of Indian offshore because of the lower CF as compared to Nordex. So the thing is that only 2 months in an year where the RE goes down or wind goes down in the near offshore or offshore, right? So That is, I think, if I recall correctly, it is somewhere March and November. So that means in case we start putting the technology initiatives into offshore, near offshore in Tamil Nadu, in Gujarat and other parts of the world, or not world, but India. So that, I think that can give you a quasi baseload inputs, which can run round the clock really, and piggyback with that with the good solar, whatever you have, and then maybe pumped hydro or kind of long duration storage technology. So that is one thing which I believe. Second thing is like, I think as we are left with onshore with the lower wind regime regions like LWST, what we say, that means you need a poorer specific power. Today the specific power, if you take the likes of the OEMs we have, is ranges from 210 to 172 watt per meter square, right? So I think even if you go with the larger rotor dia with the same megawatt and higher hub height will not give, it will give a better generation because of the positive shear. But definitely larger rotor dia has to come up quickly. One good thing that with the for green hydrogen, for the export-oriented units, RLMM is not a mandate. I think that can be taken as an opportunity to explore and bring those technologies from outside and bring it on ground, higher hub heights, lower RDs, to make the power to fetch more out of whatever you have from the wind resource. I think these two main things are, I think, I believe can be a game changer. Definitely it has to be backed up by government, which is one very good thing that India being a single grid, that is what differentiates us from others. Because, taking one more minute, see, like domestically producing hydrogen is one thing, but when you are competing with the world, supplying hydrogen or methanol or ammonia, other parts, you are competing with other countries, right? The Saudi, low cost of money, good solar, even good wind, lot of saline water desalination, all ecosystem in place, but grid is not very, very good. So we have to see our positives and see how we can compete with others. So I think, in short, we need to be technology innovator, or I will say not make in India, but invent in India. So it should be invent in India, and then only we can take the path ahead. This is what I believe.
Thanks. Bharat, now to you.
I think just I want to add up some more things. I will not talk more on the big size machines now because to ISTS waiver, which is highly critical for any RE power. Okay, for hydrogen, they have given a waiver till 2030. But for other sectors, hard to abate sectors, very, very important that ISTS waiver has to be maintained at least till 2030. Why? Because the steel sector and the fertilizer sector, they have started decarbonization process quite lately actually. So very important for them to have this. Very important is state government sector issue is they charge ED very heavily. They actually duty very heavily. Yesterday I was seeing Chhattisgarh, the charges are around 1.4 rupees per unit.
Yes.
For steel, for the cement project. How can we think of getting RE there actually? RE becomes 5 rupees, 6 rupees. These are the waivers which has to be supported by the state governments or the central governments. Very important is, again, for any connectivity, you have to keep on applying a lot of BGs. So most of the capex get blocked actually. A lot of working capital get blocked. Maybe again we are doing advocacy, how can we use corporate guarantees and COD bound, how can we come out of all these things actually. So these are the things which are, all supports are required, then only India, what is talking about 2017 net zero is possible because each and everybody has to go together. It is not only one sector perform, the other sector doesn't perform. If each and every sector performs, then only India can achieve it.
Aravind?
So, I mean, let me not talk specifically about the wind energy alone, Mr. Sidharth. So, one thing I find is, whenever we talk about cost of any product, let's say hydrogen, only talk about two things, all the capex and related thing, plus the cost of renewables. We did a hydrogen microgrid at IIT Madras, the building is running on hydrogen. At the time we realized there are too many other costs that adds up in between all of them. And so, a demonstrative projects, before going into very, very large scale, we went to, let's say, whatever the X that you're targeting. It can be hydrogen for now, for the sake of the discussion. If you can have some demonstrators at few megawatt scale or less than a megawatt also, that will enable us to understand the entire economics completely. You know, the technology risk associated with each and every segment of the end-to-end, I would talk from, well-to-wheel kind of like an entire story, or well-to-gate at least, gate as hydrogen partly, if you consider that scenario. The technology demonstrator has to be done first before we understand the cost of the product itself, is what I personally felt. We kind of really oversimplified the overall cost of hydrogen. When we did the microgrid, we understood. Man, I think when you read any research articles, any like reports, consultancy reports, whatever it is, only few costs are being talked about, and not the rest of it, which are really adding up to the running cost over time, because they break down, or you have to change something, or all of it, like inverters, converters, wires, whatever it is. So my belief is that maybe we should really do a small demonstrator with the help of government. Like government is now doing Hydrogen Valley Innovation Clusters, hydrogen hubs, either through Department of Science and Technology or MNRE. If you can do a similar project on wind to X, we understand the whole economics. And this data has to be out to everyone and not locked down to specific company, specific player. And that's where I think government comes into play. I think all our panelists were also talking about it. If you can do one proper project, it can be multiple places.
Targeted wind to X.
Exactly. That will give us a clear idea of what is the reality. Because we always take the number from somewhere else, outside India, and that numbers doesn't have to directly or proportionately like work for India. And our numbers are kind of really tweaked, and we have to tweak it because our renewable availability is very different. Our the human resource charges are very different, and so and then many things can be localized, and some of the components which we localize might not perform as well as elsewhere, and that cost adds to the running cost over time.
Got it.
So those things, a demonstrator. I leave with that word, demonstrator. If we can probably do something of that sort.
But it's surprising, when we talked about just a while back that the hydrogen sector is heavily loaded towards wind. It's going to be 60-70% wind, and we still do not understand the costs. So that's a pretty surprising thing, to sort of get there.
Yeah.
And Nishaanth, I want to bring you in at this point, and as Sudhir was mentioning, as Bharat was mentioning, that this whole wind profile is very important. That you make sure that the larger wind, that the profile is good in nearshore areas and so on and so forth. So to what extent do you see that as a barrier in terms of the policies that are there in order to enable us to deploy wind in the right locations, in the right grid areas, in the right specific where we really can get the best out of it? What are some of the challenges? How can we drive the wind sector in those?
Well, Sidharth, when it comes to the wind sector, I will claim my, lay my ignorance down. I have learned so much from what Sudhir and Mr. Saxena was speaking today. But I do understand that wind complements hydrogen very well. Wherever there's excess production of you've seen this in Europe already, in seasons and in times when there's too much wind, hydrogen can be used to capture that and used as a form of LDES or in so many other applications. I've been in some conversations in Gujarat, and I think India holds tremendous potential for offshore. We have about 120. I'm sure there are more experts in the room. I can see that might correct me on this, but Gujarat itself had 32 gigawatts of offshore potential. And India hasn't even started. So, and repowering in Tamil Nadu, that was a conversation I was involved in late 2020. And that also holds so much more potential. So I think looking at these areas, how the sector can grow will really complement our overall energy ambitions.
But again, then coming to Sudhir and Bharat, on this, wind has to complement solar to be able to produce low RE costs. We understand that. We understand that, near-shore sites are good. We should develop them. We also understand that, the specific power has to be lower to be able to sort of get into the equations. But when you look at the numbers that we are talking about, for a 1 MTPA hydrogen ammonia plant, you require around 6 gigawatt of renewable. When we talk about the number 70% being wind, so 4.2 gigs of wind required, 3.6 to 4.2 gigawatt of wind required. That kind of scale, to execute that in India from an infrastructure, land, connectivity, what needs to be done?
Yeah, I think I'll just start it, then Sudhir can take over. That is a major constraint what is there at present in India actually. Maybe whatever the connectivity is available, it is already filled up by 2025. Now, any connectivity is there since 2027 only, and after that it is 2029 only. Very important for the Ministry of Power. I think they are very well aware, and they are doing follow-up on weekly or daily basis. What I came to know is to start getting into HVDC lines all across whatever is planned, 765 kV lines, 745 kV lines. Those all have to be bought on the corridor. Plus, very important is to optimum utilization of this, the entire transmission corridor. What happens? Solar operates only for 20% time. The 80% of the time, the corridor is not utilized. Complementary is going to help that time, because same connectivity, there should be, and we are advocating again with the state, the Ministry of Power and MNRE is, allow storage to happen the rest of the time. When they have taken connectivity for only 25% CUF on the daytime, evening times, and they should be allowed the other connectivity on the same substation.
So
that
yes,
only may be helping to add on more.
so you say the current connectivity, there is a shortage to execute.
Heavily
the plans.
shortage.
Heavy shortage.
Heavy
So-
shortage.
So
The
there is
plan
a
of
conflict.
500 gigawatt cannot be done with this kind of connectivity by 2030.
So 500 gigawatt is for the grid only. That is not there. So hydrogen has no chance. You say
Hydrogen
these big
has no
projects.
chance as on date actually.
No chance.
Otherwise, you have to have your own in-plant generation,
Okay.
your own grid, where you have a dedicated grid yourself. You
But
make
that's
it
very hard to have.
That is very hard to have.
Because then
There are
how do you
people-
transport hydrogen?
That is a challenge what India is going to face. I think each and everybody in the Ministry of Power is also very well aware of this. That is this major challenge we'll have to overcome. One thing they can overcome is by utilizing it. Same connectivity has to be given for a wind or for a storage. That is the thing what they can do first. Second thing is build the corridor parallelly, on the fast track. All the green corridor, water has been talked as on date. They have to start executing fast. The ROE issue has to be sorted out. State government has to get involved to sort out the ROE issue so that the transmission line and the stations can come on time.
Yeah, but they say, na, then what will the developer do if they start getting into ROW?
They will not get, but there are state issues, because these are all state issues and the central issues. Because the lines most of the lines are either ISTS lines or the state lines. Those has to be laid to flow the power. It is not a
Not the developer to the-
private, not a private dedicated line.
Sidharth?
Yeah, so I second your thoughts, first of all. So actually we are sitting on a volcano which is about to erupt. And
I fully agree with that notion, because when I look at all the comments that we're going, it looks like a big volcano that's ready to erupt.
yeah. See, now we should really move from rhetorics to the reality, in the sense that all the connectivities are being exhausted. We are talking bullish on it, but the ground reality is that now we are struggling, right? Not only like every sector, whether it be government or be the private sector, they're struggling to achieve the target. We have all the ambitions in hand, all the finances in hand, but struggling to get the right sites, right? So the first point, I second what Bharatji was saying, that let us de-bottleneck the evacuation infra, because we are only using very less. Solar in Badla is pumping only in the day and in the night it's sleeping, right? So I think government is coming with the tenders. How can you put the battery
There's also
storage and
staff
things
paper
like that?
from CERC which has started to talk.
Yeah. So I think that is so one good thing, the government is very positively motivated to help us out. So, but the good thing is much more has to be done. Okay, so out of the box, we have to keep on pushing more infra of evacuation. I think evacuation is the win thing. If it is resolved, I think, and second thing, definitely yesterday people talk about land. So land, yes, it's a baby wherein when any country is developing and moving towards developed economy, so all the sectors are moving in parallel. So how you marry all of them together? Like for example, now in every state, the airports are getting increased, okay? And that is creating by itself any other byproduct of eating out the precious land for the wind, okay? So yes, so that is the path of development. How to coexist? Some kind of innovative solution, just keep only funnel area restricted for that, release other areas for the wind, because all good wind sites are getting exhausted because of that. And definitely it's, as you mentioned.
But India has such a big land mass, and but you see a lot of conflict in terms of the use of land. Why is that? Is it because you're talking about some specific sites where it needs to happen, which are sort of conflicted already?
Yeah, see, some sites are already getting affected. We all know, we don't want to name it. But second thing is, as you move ahead, it is everywhere you're getting new kind of airport announcements. And then, now I can't put it, just be scared about it, right? So that is what various ministries and people like us should sit together, find a solution to that. So that will be
Like the Gati Shakti for logistics should be done for renewable, that everybody is coordinated.
Yeah, I think that is the
On the good
reality.
sides.
One or two more things here actually. One way is, I don't know how we will optimize the usage of banking. Banking is done only on STUs, whether we can do on CTUs. Those all have to be there has to be some innovation. Some innovation has to happen for things to happen actually. Number one. Number two, how can we do more wheeling actually? Because everybody is trying to put up their own captive plant, but they do not have a connectivity. How can you do more wheeling? Do in-plant generation more and start wheeling for the other plants actually, other sites. These are the things which has to be seen more and more. They are not very simple, they are complicated, but at the end we'll have to do a complicated things to make the things possible.
Great. So, anything you want to add?
No, just a point, just a single statement that, see, these things are not software, these are hardware. It takes time, right? So I think it's the right time to act so that by the time we arrive to our target dates, we are there. That's the key message I wanted to give. Yeah.
Great. So I think just to summarize, what we have been discussing is that the whole conversion of electrons to molecules is a very big innovative area where there is a lot of potential for growth, and it is well suited to wind because there is a high proportion of wind required, sometimes to the extent of 60 to 70% in the power requirement. And this creates a lot of potential for innovation. This creates a lot of potential for knowing, what works, what doesn't work in the wind. So innovation is required in two aspects. One is the technology of electrolyzers. One is on the technologies of wind and how do you sort of really get the best turbines. And there are some policies which exempt RLMM so as to bring in the right technology. So but innovation is still required on that. And then we moved on to some very important points around, the other costs which are not talked about, which is the transmission costs, for example, the electricity duty costs, which are never taken into equation where there is a support that is required. Then we talked about the infrastructure, that there is a specific kind of sites which are required and the infrastructure connectivity is simply not there. So they also need a lot of support. And finally, because of the demand is so huge, so there has to be some mandates to kick off the demand to be able to get there. So that seems like there's a huge potential that is coming in. There is a lot of motivation from the government to come in. And this area is quite big in terms of opportunities for everyone, be it IPPs, be it the investors, be it people who are into education and skill development and so forth. And I want to ask Aravind, Aravind, what kind of opportunities do you see for people to get trained in this area intellectually as well as engineering-wise? What do you see is the opportunity for people who are just starting their career in renewable when they look at wind and hydrogen and sort of?
So thanks so much for asking that. And this I've been facing the standard answers that we get, like whatever we get trained in the academic institute doesn't apply to the industries. So I give a simple answer, like let's train them to the relevance, whatever that's relevant to the industries. That's where we find either it's undergraduate program, like they have to be industry ready the moment they go in. They should not start from ground zero just with the basics. So the last year, I'm giving almost the exact, the activity that we probably have to do. Let them go and get trained in the places where I used the word demonstrators before, so that they exactly know what they're going to face in the real-time industries. So the demonstrators, for example, if we can train the people, and they'll be industry ready straight away. And industries doesn't have to worry about finding the right set of people, which the EV market is now facing. Of course, the skill development and then the people moving from place to place and never settle in a place because there's a lot of...
more practical experience is what you think?
Exactly.
More demonstration
Exactly.
labs, more practical experience, that would help.
Exactly. Relevance to the industries. Wind to X, we have a full-length demonstrator. Let them get trained on operating each and everything along with the fundamentals that they have learned. I think our curriculums have to be literally revisited, is what I felt. And that's going to be a very humongous task. We have to convince so many people. That's what I said, you have a last year project. Let's create demonstrators. There's a lot of programs coming around. And we create internships for 6 months. Let them come and get trained, let's say how the wind turbine works, when it is connected to a converters, how it works and all of it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Aravind. I think last 15 seconds for each participant as closing comments. So maybe we can start from there.
Yeah, so closing remarks, yeah, it's very, very wonderful industry I'm in. I'm fortunate enough. From thermal, which was complicated, initially solar, almost nil complicated, Now it is going into a closed cycle, closed loop controls.
A lot of problem solving is needed.
Yeah, so
lot of excitement.
Yeah, so happy to be here in this space.
Let's not talk only about the issues, let's talk quantitatively and address the issues. Work together.
I'll only say this is the biggest opportunity what India has. The entire globe is looking to
Fully
us.
agree.
The biggest opportunity what India has, and each and every industry has in India.
And looking at the challenges, the kind of problem solving, the kind of talent that is needed is going to be a big magnet.
Well, this is the greatest opportunity in our generation, and if you're looking at for a career, for investments, and any kind of technology that disrupts the energy system, it's going to be a big hit. So I think we all need to stay invested in this sector.
Great. So that brings us to the end of the session. So thank you so much, my dear panelists, for a nice discussion. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So thank you so much.